I got a guest analyst. His name is Gbolahan Olojede. Thank you so much, Gbolahan. It's good to see you on this platform, and good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning. Nice to be with you this morning.
Yes, you sound so positive. I like the vibe. So let's begin with the front page of the Daily Trust. Yeah, if you take a look at it, what catches your attention? Loaves of bread on the shelf, and then the caption above it says, "Bread beyond reach, citizens lament." Two writers to that story. Let me quickly run them by you. Bakers shut down, bakeries due to rising cost of production, and then Nigerians are beginning to seek relatively cheaper foods. What's your take?
Well, typically, that's a natural reaction when a particular food item is rising above the reach of certain income group. They will look for alternative. Is a normal economic theory or reaction. But it's also an unfortunate one. Like I've always liked to mention, anytime I'm discussing this food matter, it is easy to see that the biggest elephant or the elephant in the room, as far as our inflation cost is concerned, or the general cost of living crisis is concerned, is food.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so expensive. It has taken a chunk of people's disposable income, and people are seeking alternative to be able to feed themselves. It's quite an unfortunate situation, and I hope that whatever measure that the federal government wants to deploy, that it deploys it in time so that we can begin to also see the result as quick as possible.
I like that. That's very well said. Now, let's take a look at this other thing that has Nigerians all tied up in knots. This thing about the Samoa report. The federal government says it is awaiting the position of the media. Now, yesterday, the Nigerian Bar Association told the House of Reps, and the House of Reps kind of agreed that they should put a hold on, the agreement. This thing about the Samoa report. What's your take? Do you understand it? What exactly is that about?
The problem I see in the immediate is that if you take a pool of 100 people that are condemning the Samoa report, I can assure you that 98% of them have not read that report. It's about a 170-page report. For you to actually take a position on a report, it is believed that you will have read it. How many of them have taken time to digest that report? That is number one. Number two is that the issue being pointed out is something that we are sensitive to. In fact, it is actually against the law of the land if it is contained therein. So I think what the MBA is trying to do is say, look, let's have the time to look through this report and advise you. Because even for the House of Rep, it's not enough to just say, oh, hang in there. But if they have not read it, how many of the members of that National Assembly have taken the time to digest that report? So if you have not, the question is, what is the basis for your position? Mm-hmm. You have to read. So I'm guessing that MBA will do that on our behalf and be able to give a better advice on how to move forward on that report.
Very well said. Now, let's take a look at this one here. The NARC reels out new sanctions for discos. Now, this thing about the unbundling of NEPA when it happened, privatization of that industry, when it happened under former president Goodluck Jonathan, that was it. Yeah, people had accused the president of giving, the contracts to his cronies. But now the NERC seems to be, bringing the hammer down on discos. Do you think it's a little bit too late for this? Or do you think there might be some form of changes if the sanctions are had?
The sanctions are very important. That is part of the role of the regulator. When you allow the operators to just run freely without anybody to pull the reins, there's a problem because operators might overdo things. So part of the role of the regulator is to look in that nexus and ensure that nobody is fleecing the Nigerian public, that operators are keeping to the promises they have made, and where they do things they're not supposed to do. They are called to order, and appropriate sanctions are meted out. That is the way to create sanity between the operators and the consumers of that particular product, especially in a season where the government is trying to do some reform. When you try to do reforms, you must earn the trust of the consumers. So if there is no proper regulatory framework, execution of the regulations, then you're not going to build the trust, and the reform will be too hard a work for them to carry out.
Fantastic. Talking about regulation, there's this major headline on the front page of the Vanguard, and it says, we will regulate the price of imported food stuff. This is coming from the federal government. This catches your fancy, right?
Of course. I'm particular. I'm so particular about the need of intervention in the food space, because if we're able to intervene in the food space, it will help to douse the pressure that we are facing by virtue of cost of living crisis in this country. So government can intervene even in the price control, no doubt about that. That is because the price of imported food is known. So if I say I allow people to bring in corn into the country, I know what is the international price for corn.
Yes.
And I can determine what is the reasonable amount that it should sell for in the market. So in order to prevent a situation in which Nigerians will fleece other Nigerians in this matter, government may put an eye into that price control related issue. There is another complication there. That complication is the fact that it has been found out that a lot of neighboring countries are also coming into Nigeria to come and buy food. If these people are offering better prices, the fact that food has been brought into Nigeria may not, you might now have a situation in which some of these food are being diverted, sold at higher prices to people coming in from other countries to come and buy it.
Wow.
So government has a role to ensure that this intervention, when it is done, that the food coming, it is sold at the right prices, and the beneficiaries are Nigerian. That is important for government to do. Otherwise, we may not be able to get the right level of benefit from that intervention.
I agree. The government is also promising that food prices will crash in 180 days. But I got a couple of riders to that story I want you to listen to. Ali Ndume is alleging that President Tinubu has been fenced off by a cabal, and he's saying that they can't see the president to advise him on food crisis. And he's lamenting that even ministers, that's the president's kitchen cabinet, cannot even see him. And then he's saying that Nigerians like the Sudanese are dying of hunger, insists that children in the Northwest are malnourished. But this is the one I want you to really take a look at. And Ndume is saying that the president has been fenced off by forces. Does this remind you of what Aisha Buhari once upon a time alleged about the cabal fencing off her husband? I'd like your take on this.
It actually even goes way before the Aisha Buhari one. The word cabal became popular in the Yaradua days. When Yaradua was ill, when the late Yaradua was ill, there was this fence that was built around him, and people could not get a true feel about what is going on with the then president. So the same thing repeated itself sometimes, in the Buhari regime, when the wife actually said, look, cabal, as they have hijacked my husband's administration. So it's not new. There are strong establishment people, and some of these people have been around forever. They can hijack an administration. There are also situations in which the people that a leader surrounds himself with can also hijack an administration. They are the trusted people to him, so they tend to fence off every other person and make him unreachable. Whatever the case may be, whatever Ali Ndume is complaining about may be, I believe that there is a way to solve it. Number one, all these ministers, don't they see him every Wednesday when they have the fake meeting.
Uh-huh.
It's an opportunity. All of them are seated at the table right there, so the ministers can voice, be able to voice. Unless we've now gotten to a stage when ministers cannot even talk at the fake meeting, then that becomes a very serious problem. However, comments like this are being made. It means that the president himself must listen to this kind of comment.
Yes.
And be aware so that if he needs to speak to people, he needs to speak to people. I will add on top of that there's something called management by walking around, in which a top leader will take a walk on the shop floor, will talk to the ordinary people, because sometimes the reports you get from your own direct report do not represent the whole picture of what you need to know. So maybe sometimes the president needs to get down from the horse and then take a ride and take a walk on the street and talk with the ordinary man on the road.
Absolutely. In fact, this thing you just said happened in Lagos some years back when former Governor Fashola was the governor of Lagos State. You remember what he did?
Yes.
He wore his baseball cap one evening, cool evening, took a stroll and, unannounced went into one of the general hospitals and discovered the rot for himself happening there. So I agree with you perfectly. I don't know. You remember that incident, don't you?
Correct. He does that. He did that a few times. He would drive himself on the streets of Lagos in the evening. And I guess it's just to observe. In fact, I remember a contractor said he called him somewhere in the middle of the night and said, I'm driving past the contract that was given to you to execute. So let's be able to take a walk on the shop floor as a leader.
Absolutely. Very well said. Now, this other story catches my attention. It's on the front page of The Guardian. It says CSOs, others fault livestock ministry as NRC resumes cattle transport by rail. Now, this is a controversy that is brewing. Yesterday, one of the headlines that was, common across board said that the federal government is mulling the creation of a livestock ministry. What's your take on this?
It's a very controversial issue when you consider the antecedents. But it's also a subject matter that we must confront. It's not something we should run away with. I've heard people who say, just pass the no open grazing law, and that will solve the problem. No, law does not solve a problem that has several dimensions. This particular livestock problem, it has a socio-cultural dimension, it has a religious dimension, it has an economic dimension. If you think that passing the law solves the problem, you're just joking. Maybe you've not paid attention to states that have already passed the law and ask yourself, how did this solve the problem in those states? So it's a combination of so many things. We also cannot continue to run away from it. We must discuss it and confront it and deal with it decisively. So Ministry of Livestock might be a step, but what is the ministry supposed to do? What are the details? We need to discuss it. It goes beyond a presidential fiat to just create a ministry.
Very well said. Now, this is the last one I'll have you take a look at before we wrap this up. Conflicting court orders. CGN vows to deal with errant judges. What do you think about this, though?
It's long overdue. Judges are knowledgeable people about the law. They are the people that have been granted that right to interpret the laws of the land. If these people are abusing that position, interpreting the law in the wrong way, there must be punishment, clear punishment. We must show examples by punishing those who are erring, because they know and they chose to walk on the wrong path of that law. They are debasing the profession and they are bringing the judiciary into disrepute. So the Chief Justice is right to say, we will call you to order. Let him do exactly that and let us see what he's doing, because he also has to be transparent about his approach on such matters.
Well, you have been very insightful today. And on top of that, you've been very gracious today. I do understand that we called you on a very short notice, and you are gracious. Thank you so much for coming on board the show this morning.
Thanks for having me. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. You too.